Hi, I'm Chris from needlepointers.com. Today I'm excited to share with you a tutorial on how to make these field bags. This bag is perfect for school or day trips. To make the bag more durable, I recommend using heavier fabric like duck cloth, twill, or denim. On the front of this bag I have machine embroidered a design, but you can leave it plain like this one with just the owl fabric, or you can add patches or some other decoration to the bag. This large field bag is 5 inches deep and features a hanging pocket on the inside. It's also fully lined and finished with no raw edges. As you can see, even the inside flap of the bag is lined with cotton fabric. It has a nice wide adjustable strap, and large buckles hold the bag closed. What you need to make this field bag is 3/4 yard of a main fabric. I recommend denim, twill, duck cloth, or another heavy fabric. 3/4 yard of lining fabric in a cotton print. 1/4 yard of fabric for a hanging pocket. The hardware you'll need is 2 parachute buckles, 2 2-inch rectangle strap hardware, 1 2-inch rectangle strap slide, 2 yards of 2-inch wide strap webbing fabric, 1 yard of 1-inch wide strap webbing fabric, and 1 zipper that's at least 7 inches long. As you're cutting out each piece of fabric, I recommend using either pins or some kind of thing to mark the letters that are listed on the pattern for each cut piece. From the main fabric, you'll need to cut one 12.5 by 16 for the front flap and 2 of the same size for the front and the back of the bag. Cut a gusset piece at 42 inches or width of fabric by 5 inches and cut a flap cover 2.5 inches by 12.5 inches. From the lining fabric, cut one piece 12.5 by 16 for the front flap lining, and then 2 pieces the same size for the front and the back. Also, cut one gusset piece width of fabric by 5 inches. For the 2 gusset pieces, you could cut them a little bit smaller in order to have a bag that's not quite as deep. So for my sample here, I actually cut my gusset piece for the outside and this fabric to be 4 inches wide. So that will give me a 3-inch wide bag. For the hanging pocket, cut one piece 7 inches by 14 inches and another piece 7 inches by 2.25 inches. Okay, to start, we're going to prepare and set aside the buckles for later use. So for the parachute buckles, we will need 2 6-inch pieces of 1-inch webbing and 2 12-inch pieces of 1-inch webbing. For the rectangle strap hardware, we're going to need 2 3-inch pieces of 2-inch webbing. The webbing will fray if you leave it unsealed, so I recommend using either fray check or a lighter. I just like to use a lighter, and you run it back and forth until the little edge melts a little bit. Let's set up the parachute buckles. First, take your 2 6-inch pieces and wrap them around the parachute buckle back and forth on the side where the buckle inserts into, or the female side. Fold it completely in half so the ends line up. Put a zipper foot on your sewing machine and stitch a line of stitching back and forth like a few times to hold this together, and that will hold the buckle in place. Here's the sewn strap to the buckle. For the other side of the buckle, thread the longer piece, the 12-inch piece of strapping, through the buckle. Fold the side that's coming off of this end of the buckle. We don't want the buckle to be able to slide off. I'm going to fold it twice, about 1/4 inch down each time, and then I'm going to stitch across to hold this in place, and then that will help keep the buckle from sliding off of the strap. And I went back and forth so that it will hold better, and when I pull on this, I can see that it's not going to fit through the buckle. For your rectangle hardware and the 2-inch wide strap pieces that are 3 inches long, thread it through, fold it in half, and then using a zipper foot, sew close to the buckle. And again, do this back and forth a couple times. And there are those two finished. Those are now ready to be used later, so set them aside. Next, we're going to make the hanging zipper pocket. Put a zipper foot onto your machine and move your needle over to one side. You'll need your pieces P and Q and the zipper. Place the long edge of the smaller piece of fabric, which is labeled P, along one side of the zipper with right sides facing together. If you have a 7-inch zipper, then your zipper is going to be the length of this piece. I have a longer zipper, so I can just place it anywhere in the middle. If you have the shorter zipper, just line up the ends of the zipper along the ends of the piece of fabric. Stitch a straight stitch close to the zipper. Finger press it open with right sides together. Stitch the longer piece onto the other side of the zipper, and make sure you will line up the edges on each side with the other piece of fabric that you stitched on. Finger press this piece open too. Move your zipper pull to the middle. Fold the long edge up. Align the two short edges along the top. Pin the longer edges together, and where the zipper is open, pin your zipper so that the two edges of the zipper are close together so that the zipper will work. Stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance along both sides. Next, I'll trim the zipper. Zigzag stitch over the raw edge so that it will finish it and it won't fray. So there you can see I've sewn the zigzag. Next, I'm going to turn the bag right side out and push out the corners. I'm going to go give it a good press with my iron. Okay, I've pressed it, and the last step is to zigzag along the top edge of the bag. That finishes the hanging pocket that will be inside the bag. I forgot to mention the general directions for making this bag. Unless otherwise specified, use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you're using heavier fabric, use a jeans needle or a 9014 needle. Use your straight stitch at a normal length. Next, I'm going to curve the corners of pieces A, B, G, and H. Use a plate, a CD or DVD disc, or other curved item to make the curve on the corners of one of the two short sides of each piece. So I'm going to make them along one of the short ends on each side. So what I'm going to do is lay the 3 pieces on top of each other, lining up the edges, and then take my plate, but we want the curve on all the pieces to be the same. I'm going to cut through all 3 pieces at once. And then to make sure I have the same curve on the other side, I'm going to fold it in half and then cut along the same curve. I want the same curves on the inner lining pieces. So again, I'm going to line up the 3 pieces together and then lay my already curved piece on top and then cut the curve. Next, we're going to work on the outer bag, assembling it, and then we will work on assembling the lining. Take the piece D, which is the flap cover. I folded it in about a 1/4 inch and pressed it. Take one of the 3 main fabric pieces, place the flap cover D across the back piece with the wrong side facing down, 1.5 inch down from the squared edge, not the curved edge. As you can see, I've pinned it and it's 1.5 inches down from the top edge. Next, I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam along the 2 short edges, and then I'm going to top stitch along the bottom edge, the edge closer to the rounded bottom of your bag. Do not stitch along this top edge because we're going to stick the flap of the bag in there on a later step and then stitch it down. Okay, so now you can see the flap cover is stitched down. Next, we're going to attach the straps with the parachute buckles, the male side, to the front of the bag. So take one of the other curved outer bag pieces and place, this is the end of the buckle that you didn't fold over. Measure 2 inches from the bottom of the bag and 2.5 inches from the side. And I'll place a pin to hold it in place. I want to do the same with the other buckle. We're going to stitch a little square box with an X in it on each of these near the end of the strap. To add some extra support, I'm going to just use either You can use some extra fabric that you have, just a piece of scrap fabric that's about 2 inches by 2 inches, or a piece of interfacing that you have scraps left over, and put it under where you're going to stitch, and that'll just give it some extra support. So I'm going to start stitching along the bottom edge and make sure I go over the edges just a teeny bit and stitch back. Then I'm going to stitch up one of the sides by about 1 inch or so. Then I'm going to turn and I'm going to go diagonally across to make part of the X. And now I'm back at the original corner I started at. I'll flip the fabric around again and then stitch up the side again. I always get this wrong, so it doesn't matter. If you do some extra stitching, it'll just make it more secure. So now I'm going to go the other diagonal, and I haven't stitched across the top yet, so I know there's a pattern you can do that you'll just get it all at once. But I like to finish along the top here, and I suggest stitching back and forth and over the edge a couple times, because this is the point of stress. Stitch this, the other side the same way, and on the back you can see the extra fabric is in there to help give it support. Next, put a couple pins in these straps to keep them out of the way as I sew the bag together. Next, take your gusset piece, which was piece C. We can add the gusset to either the front or the back first, it doesn't matter. Starting on the squared corners, line up your gusset piece along the edge, pin it following along the edge of the bag, lining up the raw edges, and it's right sides together. So then I ended at this top edge, and you can see there's a little bit extra, and that's because depending on how sharp of a corner you have cut, it will make the length longer or shorter. So I just made sure that we cut it with a fabric so we would have enough. So now I can just cut off the top. So now I'm going to sew around this edge with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. We want to reinforce the seam, so stitch a second line of stitching about 1/8 of an inch from the first seam. Okay, so here I've sewn it, and if you can see, I have 2 lines of stitching there that are pretty close together. This is to help it so that it won't fray and to support the seams, because, you know, a bag can take a lot of stress from having a lot of stuff inside. The next step is to sew the other side onto the other side of the gusset in the same way. So I'll be back after I've sewn that and reinforced the seam. Okay, so my bag is starting to take shape. I have double lines of stitching on both the front and the back. Next, we're going to sew the gusset eye onto the back lining pieces the same way as we did the outside of the bag. We're going to pin the gusset around the bag back, aligning the raw edges, and stitch with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Trim off the extra gusset because you'll have some extra again at the top, and then sew the front lining on in the same way. Okay, so now you can see I have the lining complete. It's open at the top, and the outer bag complete. I forgot to mention, leave a 3 or 4 inch hole along the bottom, one of the bottom seams, to allow for turning the bag after we put it together. The next step is we're going to put the lining inside the bag. So to do this, I will turn the lining right side out, insert the lining into the bag, align the top edges and the seams. Since we made this hanging pocket, we want to put that inside the bag, and you can hang it on either the front side or the back. I think if you don't have other pockets, you should hang it on the back of the bag. The back of the bag is the side that has the flap cover. When you put in the hanging pocket, make sure you face it so that the zipper is facing towards the outer fabric, and center it on the back, lining up the raw edges. Pin the top of the bag all the way around. Okay, so here I've pinned it all the way around. I have my pocket in here. For the seams, I face them towards the side gusset fabric. On the outer fabric, and on the inner fabric I face them towards the front and the back. Next, sew around the top with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then we'll be turning the bag. Here's the top sewn all the way around. Next, I'll turn the bag right side out through the hole in the lining. So my bag's starting to take shape. I have the lining inside, and my hanging pocket is facing towards the center of the bag. So the next step is going to be to close this opening that I just had in the lining. So I'll go to the ironing board, and I'm going to flip the edges in by a 1/2 inch and iron it. And then you can either whip stitch it closed with hand stitching, or you could sew a line of stitching close to the edge to sew it closed. Then you can push this into the bag and line up the edge at the top here and give it a good iron all the way around. Then top stitch around the top of the bag near close to the edge, and then add another line of stitching 5/8 of an inch down. Here's the lining. I've ironed it and top stitched it close to the edge just to close up the hole. All right, so I have the top of the bag finished. I made sure the lining is just below the top edge of the bag so it doesn't show on the outside. I stitched 2 lines of stitching. One is about 1/8 of an inch from the top edge. The second line of stitching is 5/8 of an inch from the top edge. For the second line of stitching, be sure you're not going more than 5/8 of an inch from the top edge, because when you go across the back, if you're too wide of a seam, you're going to catch the bag flap, and we don't want to sew that close yet. The next thing we're going to do is do the bag flap. Since I'm using a print for the outer of my bag, I am going to just leave it plain like it is, but you could add patches, you could add machine embroidery to the front of your bag. This is another bag I made, and I machine embroidered on the front of the bag because I used plain canvas fabric for this one. And so customize your bag in any way you would like. You'll want to add them to the flap before we sew them together, because if you put them on afterwards, they're going to show through to the inner flap lining. Also, when you're adding your embroidery on, keep in mind where the straps are going to be placed so that you don't place your patches or anything in the same location where the straps will be. So lay flap A and flap lining G with right sides together. Don't stitch the top edge because we're going to use that to turn it. Stitch with a 1/2 inch seam allowance around the edge. I've sewn this around, and next clip the corners, making sure not to clip over your stitching line. Turn the flap right side out and press. The next step is to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and then put a second line of stitching another 1/8 of an inch inside of that one to give it more of a decorative look. All right, there's the stitching. Next, we're going to add the other half of the straps to the front flap. Measure 2 inches from the side and line the edge of the strap up with that, and measure 2 inches from the curved edge up to the top edge of the strap. As we did before, we'll sew a box with an X inside to attach the strap to the flap. Make sure you face the straps down that way, not this way. Okay, so now my straps are attached. Next, take your bag with the bag flap cover, the back facing up, and the flap with the buckles facing towards you. Open the bag flap cover and slide the flap into the bag flap cover. And you want it to be all the way. Top stitch along the edge about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the flap cover, and then stitch a second line of stitching another 1/8 of an inch away from that stitching to secure it firmly. Okay, so I've attached the flap to the bag, and I've stitched 2 lines of stitching along the top edge. When you're attaching the bag flap, make sure that your pocket is laying flat And when you're stitching near where the zipper is, go slowly. The zipper is kind of a little bit in the way, but you should be able to go past with your regular presser foot. I just realized I forgot to put the handles for the strap on here. So I've opened this up and I'm going to slide the square buckles in as far as I can put them, and I can sew along the edge to top stitch them in. Do this before you top stitch them down because it'll be much easier. All right, now the bag flap is completely sewn on and we have the hardware to hold our strap. I stitched a couple extra times back and forth across the strap hole where the strap's sewn in to make sure that it won't pull out. The bag is almost complete. The last step is to add the strap. I've cut my 2-inch webbing 51 inches long to make the strap. You can adjust the length to your preference. Thread the strap through the strap slide. Overlap by about 3 inches here. And then we're going to sew one of those boxes again with the X in the middle. And I would put some extra back and forth stitching on this end. Here I've stitched the box there to hold this together. Next, thread the other end through from the back of the bag to the front. Then make sure it's not twisted. Then thread it through the slide strap. Next, make sure that your strap is not twisted, and then thread it from the front to the back through the other rectangle hardware. Overlap this end of the strap by about 2.5 inches and sew a 2-inch box the same as we just did over here. And there, the strap is finished. These straps can be adjusted, and if you find that these ends are too long, you can always cut them off and fold them over and stitch them again. So this will open up the flap and you have a nice finished inside and a nice little zipper pocket, and it can hold a pretty good amount of things in there. Milo liked using a bag like this at college last year, and it was big enough to hold their laptop and all the stuff they needed for going to classes. So this bag I made has a few extra features. It has a water bottle pocket on the side, and inside it has the hanging pocket, but it also has a big separator pocket, and then it also has 3 small pockets up here with Velcro to hold them open and shut, and then it has 2 larger pockets also with Velcro closure down here. Let me know if you'd be interested in seeing how to put these extra pockets and the water bottle pocket onto a bag. And if we get enough comments, maybe we'll make another video that has those extra features. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make this field bag. Like and share our videos, and if you're not a subscriber, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss future videos. Visit our website, needlepointers.com, for lots of sewing tutorials and free projects. While you're there, sign up for our free weekly newsletter so you won't miss new tutorials. Happy sewing!